Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Chris with InsideTheU. Excited to talk about the 2021 schedule that was released today. Definitely drop in the comments. Let me know what you think about this schedule. As I will break down each game, I want to talk about a score or a final prediction for the season, and I want to talk about the toughest games and maybe just my overall reaction to it. Definitely appreciate everybody for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments about anything, or any other videos, definitely let me know. Earlier, I posted a video of answering a question from a fan, and I think that was a great thing to start doing. I want to do more of that in the future. Also, just talking about a few other things going on. Today, I was busy doing some phone interviews for the baseball team. They're getting ready to get started on Friday for preseason practices. They've got a really good team. I'll have stuff on them. And I've been busy watching the basketball team, and I feel like I could do a whole video on what's going on over there. But it's a tough loss against Florida State. They look to rebound against Wake Forest on Saturday and a big game against Duke coming up as well. So a lot to get to with the other sports, but the big news with the schedule is the football team has announced their 2021 schedule. Riley's here. Glad you're here. Going to the Michigan State game. Excited for you to be able to do that. So let's get right into it. The big thing that comes out is Miami, just initially looking at the schedule, I find it to be very favorable in the sense that you get the toughest game with North Carolina in the ACC. You get the 2.5 weeks to prepare for that one. Then it alternates between home and away. I don't look at this schedule and feel like, okay, these are definitely huge issues. This is going to be a difficult schedule. I think when you look at it based on the records of the teams from last year, and only two of the teams, Alabama and North Carolina, finished ranked last year. Certainly Miami has to improve its play. Went 0-3 against teams that finished ranked last year. So certainly Miami needs to be better against the better teams. However, there's not a lot of great teams on this schedule. Everybody knows Alabama's going to be a tough test. And I don't think there's anybody talking about Miami being able to pull that upset. I had an article on InsideTheU.com earlier this week about Michael Irvin going on the radio saying he feels like it's going into the Lion's Den or Hell's Fire, whatever you want to call it. And basically said Alabama's not. They're probably looking at this as a tough game or a game to go against, but they don't feel like Miami's a threat right now. And it's hard to say that Miami is, based on how last season went, going 8-3, getting blown out against two teams that were good, and then playing close game against Oklahoma State, a team that finished ranked and not winning that game either. So Miami's got some work to do in the offseason, but now that the schedule is out, hopefully everything stays the same. I know last year there were multiple schedule released based on everything that was going on. But I think when you look at the schedule, and not just how it alternates in the second half with the ACC play home and away, but at the beginning of the season, you do get that tough game against Alabama in Atlanta, a neutral site game. But then you've got 4 straight home games for Miami, and then before their bye week. So I think without question, you look at the beginning of the schedule, you're looking at a 4-1 start because that Alabama game is going to be tough, but you should win those other 4 games. Appalachian State just finished just outside the top 25 at 9-3 last year. And then Michigan State struggled at 2-5. Central Connecticut State is an FCS team that did not play last season. And then Miami beat Virginia, a team that went 5-5 a year after winning the Coastal Division. So I think when you look at the start of the season, this allows you to get a lot of momentum going into ACC play. Basically, that Alabama game is going to be a great test for you to understand where you're strong at or where you need to get better at. And if you can compete in that game, I think it's going to matter a lot. I think what we've seen with Miami over recent years, is sometimes these games, Miami's really struggled to bounce back from games at times. So I think with this game, regardless of how it goes, I think it's important to play well. Also, look, everyone knows Miami's going to be a heavy underdog going into that game. And we'll see, even with Alabama replacing a number of key guys, they're still going to be the heavy favorites for that. And Miami can use that as motivation all offseason. And then also to finish, to have a good season in the ACC, because obviously they did not play well against North Carolina, blown out in that game. So Miami has 2.5 weeks to prepare for it during the season. But the way I'm looking at it is they have all offseason to worry about how to beat North Carolina and how to improve their play. Riley's looking at a 9-3 season or 10-2 overall. I don't think that's out of the question. I think anything below a 9-win season would be a disappointment. Looking ahead also to the rest of the schedule, I guess we'll stick with a little bit of the non-conference schedule. So Miami they played Appalachian State once in 2016. They won that game. And they've played Michigan State 4 times, and they've beat Michigan State all 4 times they've played them. And then Central Connecticut State they've not played. But you're thinking all 3 of those games should be wins for Miami. And I think one of the things that we're looking at when you're talking about Miami's 2021 schedule is the health of quarterback De'Aaron King. Now, De'Aaron, they've been saying early on, they've been saying that De'Aaron will be healthy enough for the opener. That is the plan. That is the goal for De'Aaron. Obviously coming after that torn ACL in late December in the bowl game. And if he's not ready, I think you're going to look for a different type of Miami team with N'Kosi Perry most likely being the backup quarterback, the starter for King if he's not ready to go, a guy that has 9 starts and a lot of experience under his belt for a backup. So things might change a little bit in that non-conference schedule if De'Aaron's not ready. But I think it's, again, even with N'Kosi Perry, even if he has to start the beginning, even if it's one of those things where De'Aaron King isn't even ready until after the bye week. I mean, again, Miami hopes he's ready for the season opener, hopes he's ready for fall camp. But again, you're looking at the schedule. I think N'Kosi can win those games in the non-conference schedule as a starter if that's what happens. So maybe it's a time with the bye week. Maybe that gives De'Aaron a little extra time to get ready for the bulk of the ACC. There should not be a lot of pressure on him because Miami should be fine without him early on. Again, I say that because that's certainly all with the exception of the Alabama game. You kind of tend to brush over that one based on things that you're expecting for that game. But certainly you're looking at the season in totality, right? You're looking at what kind of season can these guys have. And one of the things that is going to be important for Miami as a program with this 2021 season, Miami has struggled over the last 15, 20 years to put together back-to-back successful seasons. So Miami at 8-3, yes, there was a little bit of disappointment there, but if they can win 9 or 10 games in this one, to go with what happened in 2020, you have to feel good about the direction of the program, assuming people can step up their play and be ready for that 2022, right? You're looking for sustained success, and I think that's what's so important about this year. You don't want to take a step back. Head coach Manny Diaz went 6-7 his first year at Miami, takes a step at 8-3, and I think everyone would admit that's clearly a step, right? After everything that went on in 2019 with the players, quarterback situation, discipline stuff, losses to bad teams, putting together an awful season, the 8-3 season in 2020 was a step. If Miami's going to win the ACC, they've got to take another step in 2021 and create some real momentum with being successful with another good season. Fire them cannons, Canes and Bucks. I feel like the Super Bowl, I feel like it's going to be a good one. I'm definitely excited for it. We can definitely get into that a little bit later, but should be a good one for sure. 11-1. I think a lot of people, I see the prediction there. Some people do think it's going to be one of those type of seasons. Again, everything has to come together, and Miami has to be better than they were a year ago. That North Carolina game last season, and I hear what you're saying with 11-1. You're expecting the loss against Alabama, I assume. But Miami is in no position to chalk up the North Carolina game as a win. I know North Carolina's going to lose some guys, but with the way they played in a 62-26 loss, look, Miami's got work to do to beat North Carolina. You're going on the road. They still have quarterback Sam Howell. They're going to have other guys. Sam Howell certainly could do whatever he wanted in that game, and he's going to have guys to throw to in that one. So I think Miami, without question, I mentioned the 2.5 weeks to prepare for it during the season, but all off season, Miami should be looking at tape from that game, find ways to improve. North Carolina, as good as they were, they did lose 4 games last season, so find ways where they're vulnerable and find ways to attack them. Because that game was ridiculous to lose by that much. With the running game and everything that went on, North Carolina could essentially do whatever they wanted, and it was an embarrassment. So Miami's got work to do to get better, and you know exactly where it is on the schedule. I remember asking Manny Diaz about facing North Carolina going into that week, and just said, because I felt like the North Carolina game was a big game for that season all year long. I felt like it was always going to come down to Miami, North Carolina, just because Clemson was ahead and he felt like Miami had the edge over these other teams. But going into that North Carolina game, he said, yes, it was a game that they had circled before the season started. You looked down and you wanted to see when they would face North Carolina, because North Carolina was predicted to win the Coastal Division last year before they went with the one division system, a format. So everybody knew North Carolina did have a target on its back, and Miami wanted to unseat them with having a good season. And I think this season is no different. I assume right when the schedule was announced, Miami coaches and players looked right at when they played North Carolina, because that is a pivotal one for winning the division, representing the ACC Coastal Division, and advancing to the ACC Championship game, which Miami's only done once since joining the conference back in 2017. So certainly that's the goal, right? That's the goal. You got to win the Coastal, get to the ACC Championship game, and then we'll see how it goes. With the other games, and I will get to my prediction overall for this season, but as far as other tough games, first off, I want to thank everybody for jumping in here. Inkers, bring on Bama. He wants Bama. He wants all the new guys at Alabama to face a quality team in Miami. I understand that. And Miami returns 19 starters, and you have to feel good about that if you're Miami. 10 on offense, 9 on defense. The defensive ends on defense are going to be the tough ones to replace because they were such high-level guys, and Miami just doesn't have that right now. So they're going to have to find ways to have a productive defense. There's other ways to do that other than have elite defensive ends. You've got to have better linebacker play. You've got to be better in the back end at safety. I think Bubba Bolden's a guy, and I don't want to get too much into individual play, but Bubba Bolden's a guy that you saw play very well in the first half of the year. You're hoping he's able to sustain that for a full season and have a really good year. And if he does, I think he's going to be an ACC first teamer, because he was doing that at the beginning of the year, earning the ACC Defensive Back Award each week, and then just kind of didn't play very well that second half. So you're hoping a guy like him can play well. You're getting new guys in, Leonard Taylor, James Williams. You should be excited about him. Both of them, they should both make immediate impacts and make a difference on the defense. Winston is here with Crystal, 10-2, 11-1. Should be the realistic goal. I don't think there's any question. 10-win season is the goal. I am curious, after Alabama and North Carolina, those are the only two teams that finished ranked last year. I'm curious what other games you guys feel like might be a tough game, maybe a game or two that we're not thinking about immediately that could be a little bit tougher than what generally people are thinking. I think NC State falls in line with that. You know, they had a good season last year. They go 8-4 as well. Quarterback gets hurt and they were a different team. And that's when Miami played them. They didn't play them with their starter. But NC State showed some signs, making a lot of progress from what they did in 2019. So I think NC State might be a little sneaky of a team, especially with everything that's going on with that North Carolina attention. You got to come right back and play NC State. I know it's at home, but that's not going to be a gimme. That's going to be a very tough game as well, if North Carolina State makes that jump like they did this past season. So I think if you're talking about toughest games, I'm looking at that one as maybe that's one to watch for. Michigan State had a lot of transition last year. That's why they dropped off to that 2-5 season. But I think maybe if you're looking at an early season, one of those first 5 games, I think maybe that one. Certainly Miami's going to have to play well against any Power 5 conference team to get a win. Miami's not at a position where they show up and just win games. But they've got to play well against these teams, against the ACC teams. And you talk about North Carolina. I mentioned NC State, a little bit sneakier of a team. And I say it's a little sneaky because Miami doesn't always face NC State because they're in the Atlantic Division. So you don't really get a full grasp on what kind of team they are. And Miami played well against them this past year, so you're thinking you go ahead and get that win again. As far as what Miami did against these teams that they faced in 2020 compared to the 2021 schedule, so Miami went 5-1 in 2020 against these teams that they'll face this year. The only loss being to North Carolina. And I think that's a positive sign. And again, you want to build those streaks, those winning streaks against teams. That's something that's happened in the past with Miami when they're going well. When you have a successful team each year, you're starting to string together some winning streaks. And that's where you can talk about some intimidation, some doubt creeps in with the team that keeps losing. And you want to keep that going. I think none bigger than Florida State. Miami's done well against Florida State in recent years. And actually, on the message boards today, somebody wishes that Florida State game was a little earlier in the season. And I do remember those September, October matchups with Miami and Florida State over the years. And kind of looking back, and I posted a note about it. Miami and Florida State from 1992 to 2009 played in September or October every single year. Then since then, they've played in November 5 of the 11 times. So it has mixed up with the schedule. But I found that to be interesting that they used to play early all the time. Miami has a winning streak going against Florida State, so you definitely want to keep that going. And you want to do that against the other teams in the sense that with Miami being 8-3 last year, you lose the 3 games against ranked opponents. You make that step up from beating the teams on your schedule that you should beat, which did not happen in 2019. 2021, you want to keep that trend going. Now you take this step. Not only do you keep these teams behind you, like a Florida State, like a Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, keep those teams behind you in the standings, rack up wins against them, and then work on getting those wins against quality teams. And I know Miami beat Louisville last year when Louisville was ranked, and I don't want to discredit that. But the note is, Miami 0-3 against teams that finished ranked. And they only played 2 teams this year. So you're looking for Miami to play better against better teams, get wins against those, and I think that's the biggest step you want to see in 2021. Winston, definitely glad you're here, and it's awesome that you're going to you got games in mind already. Oh, you just that Alabama game. Yeah, it's in Atlanta. A lot of fun to go to Atlanta. Definitely check out Fat Matt's Barbecue. I love going to Atlanta, and I stop there every time, no matter what I'm doing. If I'm traveling, just passing through, visiting people, or just going to a game, covering Georgia Tech game. When Miami plays up there, I always stop in at Fat Matt's. Got to do that if you can. I know everything's changed, but anyways, Fire Them Cannons is here. Tighten up on the run defense, without question, is one of the biggest areas of improvement Miami needs to make in 2021. Matt P is here. Apologize for missing you earlier, but I saw you're here, and you're expecting another good season for Miami in terms of a lot of people are thinking that 11-1, 10-2 type of season. You don't want to have anything drop off from that, because I think if you look at the schedule, you don't see the quality opponents. And I know things change. Teams get better. I mentioned NC State. They're a team that certainly played better than what you thought of going into the year. But so there's teams that certainly pop up that can be threats, that play a lot better, that get better quarterback play than you expected. But the way it stands right now, early prediction, day of the 2021 schedule release, you're expecting Miami to have a 10-win season. And I think it would be an improvement. Again, you're trying to keep going, keep making improvements, and then continue to hopefully win the division. I think that's certainly the goal. And they're going to have to get by North Carolina to do that. Who else we got in here? Yeah, some quality transfers. Yeah, you get the defensive end, DeAndre Johnson from Tennessee. You get the wide receiver, Charleston Rambo from Oklahoma. And you like both of those transfer pickups. And I think both of those are great. And then obviously defensive back Tyreek Stevenson from Georgia, who they are expecting and hoping can play corner full time. Of those 3 guys, Stevenson has the most upside. I think he can make the biggest impact of the 3. I know people like Charleston Rambo. He's got really good speed and can make plays and fits in with the wide receiver group. I think the wide receiver group will be very interesting to see how it shakes out because they just have a lot of guys. I'm curious to see how roles work out. Will some of the guys last year that had high roles, will they drop down because of the new guys coming in? Or the second-year guys that have showed improvement on the scout team and getting in limited reps during games. So it'll be interesting. Spring ball is going to be very important. I think it's going to be important for guys to be out there. Hopefully nobody's hurt. Nobody's dealing with injuries. I felt like Michael Redding III dealt with injuries last year leading up to the season. I felt like that kind of slowed him a little bit. I felt like he was a guy Miami wanted to play. Jeremiah Payton was a guy dealt with injuries in and out of the lineup. He was another guy that, and essentially as soon as those things kind of happened, it was tough for them to make up ground and get in there. So that'll certainly be key for that. Mason's here, always appreciate the support. And I think, 9 wins. I think that I see the 9-win Chungus is here as well. And I think the 9 wins is certainly a minimum. I think anything below that is extremely disappointing. I do think, you do look at this schedule and maybe you don't expect which game Miami will have a tough time with. But the way things have gone in recent years, Miami has dropped games that they shouldn't have. So that's why you're thinking you don't know exactly where a third loss might come from, or second or third, however you want to look at it. But Miami has shown that they've been inconsistent at times, or they've just not been good enough to win every single game they step foot against, even if individually they should be playing better, or an individual matchup that they should be playing better in, but they eventually end up losing that game. Chungus, I think with Rambo, I think that's a thing with him. Maybe some inconsistency, and I talked about that on a previous stream. Just some inconsistent play. He has good speed, ability to make plays that you saw 2 years ago, but just got passed up on the depth chart for different reasons. More reliable guys. So he's certainly a guy that's been in college for a while now, and he's looking for one of those big years as a number 1 receiver, which he has not been at Oklahoma. Brian's here. Shout out to you. Appreciate you for stopping by. Great to see some new names in here. Any other comments? Let me know on maybe some other tough games that you think might pop up. Is Virginia Tech going to be a little bit better than they were a year ago? They've got that early game against North Carolina. I think that can set the tone for them as they look to get back as well. Miami's a team. Obviously, that's a team that we always talk about for sure. But Virginia Tech is another team that has had a lot of success in the past and has just struggled a little bit in recent years, not been able to put up those quality seasons. And certainly they're looking to do that. Pittsburgh at times has showed that they can win games, put themselves in to be competitive, and then bring back the quarterback. So that will be interesting. Mason thinks Florida State will be better, and certainly Florida State was terrible last year. But maybe they do get a little bit better. They've got to get better quarterback play, of course. But certainly with a rivalry game, you have to be ready for that one for sure too. Matt's hoping for full crowds. Sure. I know everybody's hoping for that. I feel bad for the fans. I feel like you guys really missed out on a season. I know many people really look forward to those Saturday game days, being at the stadium, tailgating, being with friends and family, and all that. I know that was tough. I know people that actually went to the games, just obviously completely different environment this past season, want to get back to everything. But hopefully everybody out there is being safe and staying well. Fire them cannons. I think that's a great question. Who's going to start? If it's not De'Aaron King, I think it's going to be N'Kosi Perry. I really like Jake Garcia. Obviously, we haven't seen him in practice or anything like that to give a full evaluation of what he'll look like in college. I do think he'll be a quality college quarterback, and right now I would say I think he'll be the next starter after De'Aaron King, full-time guy, depending on what N'Kosi does. But I do think they'll go with N'Kosi. I think especially early on with the experience, I think I'd be surprised unless N'Kosi really struggles, if he gets in there. Again, if De'Aaron's not ready, they go with N'Kosi. If he struggles, they'll go to a younger guy. But I do think N'Kosi will be that guy, the next backup for this season. And I'm okay with it. I think it's good to get young guys' development practices. You'd like to get them in games as much as possible. You're looking at maybe some opponents early on. If you can get a quarterback in there, get some experience. But certainly that'll be the thing to watch for in the spring, because regardless of what happens with De'Aaron in the fall, spring ball is out. So I'd be very curious to see how the quarterbacks, the young guys, and even N'Kosi's got, he has improvement to make too. How good is N'Kosi going to be? Because once again, if De'Aaron's not ready to go, the season still goes. So N'Kosi has to be ready if he is if he stays the backup, assuming he will. But the development of the young quarterbacks will be interesting to see. Peyton Matoka as well. And I wrote on the site that, Peyton is not transferring. He is going to stay. So we'll see how he does in the spring as another quarterback on the roster. Talking a little bit more about the schedule, and I touched on it briefly early on with the home and away thing. And maybe you're looking at like, well, what's the big deal about that? And also with that, and just real quickly, the Virginia game is on a Thursday, everything else on Saturday. Not only are all the games in that second half going to be on a Saturday, alternating between home and away, not only is that a positive, but the reason why it's a positive is because coaches and players really like being in a routine. And I think if the schedule stays as planned, alternating each week home and away on a Saturday, it's going to give this team a lot of schedule, continuity with practices and watching game film, team meetings on certain days, and then alternating on Saturdays with their travel. I think I don't think it could set up any better for Miami in that sense that coaches really like it, players like it in terms of that schedule. If it stays the same, you really like that alternating. And I think that's a big factor. And I don't think it, certainly what happens during the game and the opponent is the biggest factor on winning and losing in that sense. But I certainly think it's a benefit. It goes back to my earlier stance about this schedule. I think it's very favorable. A very favorable schedule because of those reasons, because of the lack of really quality teams. Starting out with a lot of home games at the beginning of the year, I think is a good thing. The bye week comes at a good time as it sets up for your biggest conference game of the year. I think you look at it, I don't think it could have been any better for Miami. You get that quality, elite opponent in game one, and then we'll see how that goes. One thing that stands out to me about that game, I remember when Miami played Florida, when Miami had all the young guys, went up to Gainesville, they had Tim Tebow, Miami had the young guys, and Miami, eventually got blown out and whatnot. I think it was 26-3 if I'm not mistaken, but it was close for a little bit. But I felt like that game really helped a lot of the young guys gain confidence, that they hung with them for a little bit. They made some plays during the game enough to feel good about themselves, and I think this is one of those types of games, although this will not be a young team at all. Veteran team returning 19 starters, you're expected to play really well in that game, maybe even threaten for an upset. So it is a different in that sense, but I will say that I think that game, regardless of the results, I think there should be, or you're really hoping for positive things to come out of it, even if it doesn't go well. So I want to answer a few more questions before we wrap this thing up. I talked about some of the tough games that I'm looking at on Miami's schedule. I'll get a final prediction here in a little bit, but I want to talk about any more questions that you guys have. Definitely drop in the comments. If you haven't yet, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It's a huge help. And also check out InsideTheU.com for all your coverage of the Miami Hurricanes. There's plenty of information on the team, football team. It's going to continue all off season. We do not take days off. We will have plenty of content on the team. There's always something going on. Information on defensive coordinator Blake Baker is on the site right now. So you got to check that out. And we'll definitely have updates on the latest with him and any other coaching things that might pop up. Also, the baseball team's getting ready to get started. Basketball team just went past their midway point. So we'll see how that wraps up with the second half of the season. Definitely check out all that stuff. Inc. was going to miss Brevin Jordan. I think the offense definitely will. I felt like the wide receivers weren't as good as they needed to be last year, but I felt like it could be kind of under the rug in the sense that you could have a quality offense if the tight ends played well because you had Brevin Jordan. I think you could make that the strength and just kind of have the wide receivers as complementary pieces. However, without Brevin Jordan, it is a difference. And I do like Will Mallory, but Brevin can do things that Will can't in terms of impacting the offense. So I think we'll see there. But also, just kind of looking ahead. To maybe some other things with what's going on with Miami here as I get ready for the next season. I'm looking at some of the comments here. Yeah, I think N'Kosi Perry finishes his stuff, graduate. You could definitely see that, and you kind of expected that based on some of the things that Rhett Lashley was talking about with him before the season ended, that he felt like N'Kosi loved in Miami, wanted to graduate in the spring. So maybe that will be the case where N'Kosi graduates and then hits the portal. after that. So we'll definitely see how that goes. Looking at the receivers, a lot of criticism of the receivers, and rightfully so. You're looking for jumps from those guys. They certainly need to be better. Chungus wants to know, what player do you think Miami has to get the most? Maybe the most out of, or a recruit? I've talked about the importance of adding linebackers, so I always think that's important. I will say, in terms of maybe some areas also improvement, I touched on Bubba Bolden briefly. I think the cornerback play, look, they gave up passes last year, but you're hoping for more improvement. Maybe Corey Couch takes that jump even more. He got a lot of playing time last year. Actually finished ahead of DJ Ivey in snaps this year. So maybe he takes a jump of being even a better player. And I think Corey Couch has a potential to get interceptions. I think that's the next jump for him. So I think if he can play better and play well, that will certainly help the cornerback position. But I will, must get for recruiting 2022. I think you're still looking for impact players at receiver. I think that's a big thing. But Miami's already brought in a bunch of guys. So I think the development there, I don't know if there's necessarily a guy in particular in that 2022 class that stands out to me, because the roster has changed so much for Miami this year in terms of everybody's coming back this year. There's certainly some quality defensive backs. I think maybe that's exactly where you start, because even though the corners are back this year, you're still hoping to get some young guys. I know they like Isaiah Dunson and Marcus Clark at corner, and then Tyreek Stevenson fits in there too as a second-year corner. But I think with Stevenson with Clark and Dunson, you still want to see better play. So maybe getting some better young guys in there. Earl Little's a guy for sure as a young corner. I think defensive end is a spot you want to get some quality guys there as well to compete with what they have with their young talent now. But you're looking for that really high caliber defensive end that has done well at Miami in recent years, and defensive tackle too. I think those are some positions. It'd be great to be able to find a young guy to pair with Leonard Taylor at an elite level. So that's a position that they'd like to get as well. So quality defensive linemen are important in this defense. And certainly they'd like to get some young guys to add in with Taylor. So I'm going to wrap this up. Final prediction. I'm looking at the 10 wins. I look at it at 10-2. The way I look at it, I think the Alabama game is going to be tough to win that one. I did not see enough from Miami last year to make me think that they're going to beat North Carolina automatically. De'Aaron King, I talked about him a lot. I felt like he was very good last year. I still think he can be better. I think a lot depends on De'Aaron's health. Obviously, you guys know that the whole schedule and predictions, everything changes if De'Aaron's not able to play or play at a high level. But I feel like with De'Aaron, he can definitely make more plays. He could do more. Maybe he's going to be more comfortable in the offense. And again, it's not to say he was bad, but you saw some really good games out of him last year. And I just kind of expect that to be more closer to that, although it's tough to put up those performances every single week. But I do think you'll see really improved play from him once he's healthy and gets out there. So the North Carolina game, it's still there. It still makes me feel like they're not going to win that game, because it's hard to see that big of a turnaround with a defense that loses its best two guys, some elite guys. I still think linebackers have to be better. I'm not convinced that they will be making that huge jump that you need. And then stuff in the secondary still has to be better as well. But you have some talent that you like. I mentioned Bolden, James Williams, Tyreek Stevenson. So you have some talent back there that you feel like can fill some holes. So I'll stick with a 10-win prediction as of today. I do think that there will be some tough games in there. Miami will have to play well. I mentioned NC State is a tough game. I think you want to make sure you're still ahead of Florida State. You don't want Virginia Tech to come in with momentum late in the year. I think those are ones to watch for. And certainly Virginia, they won a lot of games 2 years ago, but they lost a lot from that team. But Bronco Mendenhall is a good coach, and he'll have a good team as well. But you don't want to lose that game. Miami's played very well at home over the years for the most part. So you're looking at those road games at Pitt and Florida State. But again, Miami's played well against those teams in recent years. So you got to figure they're still ahead of them. So I'm going to wrap this up with that prediction. I definitely appreciate everybody for jumping on. I'm going to do one of those questions a little bit later. I like the live streams when news breaks. Again, check out InsideTheU.com. All your coverage, updates on the coaching situation, recruiting. We'll get more into that 2022 recruiting class. I do have some opinions. I want to get more into that. Some things that are important as this 2021 class wraps up with signing day just around the corner. So definitely appreciate everybody for jumping on. Appreciate everybody. You can watch it back. Again, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you like this. And also if you want more coverage on the Hurricanes, more stuff coming on the channel. Thanks again. Take care. And yes, hopefully the Chiefs get that Super Bowl victory.